Imagine this. You've just come out of centuries of slavery, and now you're faced with building an entire society from the ground up, right in the middle of a desert. I mean, where do you even start? Well, that's the exact challenge that Exodus chapter 23 takes on. It's basically a foundational blueprint for a new nation, and it covers everything from courtroom ethics to foreign policy.
And that's really the big question here, isn't it? This chapter isn't just some random list of rules. No, it's a whole vision for a society, one that's designed to be fair, sustainable, and totally different from the big empires around it. Okay, let's dive in and see how it all fits together.
So here's how we're going to break it down. We're going to start with the absolute foundation, the laws for justice and compassion. Then we'll look at how the text organizes time itself through this really interesting rhythm of rest. After that, we'll get into the national festivals that helped create a shared identity. From there, it gets pretty epic with the promise of divine guidance, and we'll finish with the practical, step-by-step strategy for actually settling the new land.
All right, first things first. The bedrock of any stable society, right? A system of justice. Before you can build anything else, you've got to have fair rules that protect everyone, and I mean everyone, especially the most vulnerable. You know, the chapter just gets straight to it. It doesn't start with some lofty, abstract theory. It jumps right into practical, everyday rules for how people should interact, both in court and in their communities.
Now, what's so interesting here is the balance it strikes. You're told not to spread gossip or, join a mob just because it's the popular thing to do. But get this, it also says not to show favoritism to a poor person in court, while at the same time making sure you don't deny them justice. The whole point is absolute impartiality. And it goes beyond the courtroom. You're literally commanded to help your enemy's donkey if it's in trouble. So formal justice and your personal ethics, they're completely tied together.
And this line, this is the why behind it all. The command to be fair to foreigners isn't just some nice idea. It's rooted in the nation's own trauma, their own memory of being oppressed in Egypt. It's basically saying, hey, remember what that felt like? Yeah, don't you ever do that to someone else. It's empathy written into the law.
Okay, so building on these rules for people, the blueprint now shifts to rules about time itself. It lays out a shared rhythm for life and is designed to benefit not just the community, but the very land they live on.
So the chapter introduces this pretty radical idea of a sabbatical year. The deal is, for 6 years, you work your land, you sow, you harvest. But every 7th year, everything just stops. The fields are left alone. It's a mandatory nationwide reset button for the entire agricultural system.
And the reason for this is spelled right out. It's both social and ecological. This isn't just about letting the soil recover. The text says the land rests so that the poor can come and gather whatever grows on its own. And whatever they don't take, that's for the wild animals. It's an incredible system of social welfare and environmental care, all built right into the calendar.
And this same principle of rest, it scales down to a weekly cycle with the Sabbath. And again, look at how inclusive it is. The text is super specific that this day of rest is for everyone, your kids, your servants, foreigners, and even your farm animals, so that they can all be refreshed. So we've got a system for justice and a rhythm for life. What's next? Well, creating a national identity. How do you unite a bunch of different tribes into a single people? You give them a shared calendar of events to remember and celebrate together.
3 times a year, all the men were required to travel to a central place of worship. This created this powerful national rhythm. You have the Feast of Unleavened Bread, to remember the Exodus from Egypt. Then the Feast of Harvest, celebrating the first crops. And finally, the Feast of Ingathering, at the very end of the agricultural year. These weren't just holidays, they were national pilgrimages that literally wove the nation together.
And tucked into these festival rules, you find these very specific, almost strange-sounding ritual laws, like this one about not boiling a young goat in its own mother's milk. Now, scholars have debated this for ages, but many think it was a direct rejection of a pagan fertility ritual. It just goes to show how this blueprint covered everything from huge national gatherings right down to how you should prepare your food to stay culturally distinct.
Okay, and right here, the whole chapter pivots. It shifts dramatically from what the people have to do to a divine promise, a guarantee of leadership, and the incredible blessings that are supposed to follow if they stick to the plan.
I mean, listen to that. That's a massive promise. The journey ahead isn't going to be trial and error. The text promises a divine guide, an angel, to protect them and lead them straight to their destination. This completely reframes their whole national project as a divinely guided mission.
But, and this is a big but, this divine protection isn't a blank check. It comes with clear conditions. It's a covenant. The people have to obey this divine guide and worship God alone. And if they do that, the results aren't abstract at all. They are incredibly concrete. We're talking blessings on their food and water, taking away sickness, and an end to infertility. Really tangible, real-world stuff.
And this divine promise leads right into the final section of this blueprint, the nuts and bolts strategy, both practical and spiritual, for actually taking possession of the Promised Land. The text is really clear that the battles to come won't be won by military strength alone. It promises supernatural help. God will send fear ahead of them to demoralize their enemies, and even hornets to help drive people out. It frames the whole thing as a divine campaign, not just a human one.
Now, this part is fascinating from a strategic point of view. The plan laid out is specifically not a blitzkrieg. The text warns against taking over the whole land in 1 year, and it gives 2 really practical reasons. The land would get overgrown, and the wild animal population would explode. Instead, the plan for a slow, gradual expansion, by little and little, as their own population grows large enough to actually manage the new territory. It's so pragmatic.
And this brings us to the final instructions, which lay out this really stark choice. On the one hand, you have this immense promise, a huge territory from the Red Sea all the way to the Mediterranean. But on the other hand, you have this absolute, non-negotiable warning. Do not assimilate. Don't make treaties. Don't worship their gods. The text warns that if they stay in the land, they will become a snare, causing the Israelites to sin and ultimately break their entire covenant with God.
So think about it. In just one really dense chapter, we've watched a complete vision for a nation come together. It starts with the most basic rules of fairness between people and goes all the way up to defining national borders and a divinely guided destiny. It's a truly amazing blueprint.
Which leaves us with this final big question to chew on. Exodus 23 seems to be arguing that the small, everyday acts of personal integrity, the way a society marks its time, and its ultimate national destiny, they aren't separate issues. They're all part of the same interconnected system. The big promises depend on the small acts of justice. So, what does it really mean for a nation's laws and its destiny to be so completely and totally intertwined?